Top 100 Unsolved Mysteries of the Universe, Episode 2, The Big Bang Singularity Problem. Keep rewinding the film of the universe. Galaxies collapse back into blazing gas. That gas is squeezed into an earlier state that is hotter, denser, and more crowded. And if mainstream equations are pushed mercilessly farther backward, the picture is finally crushed into a starting point where density, temperature, and curvature all blow up. That is what makes the Big Bang singularity so unsettling. The evidence for a hot early universe is genuinely strong. The cosmic microwave background, light element abundances, and the whole early thermal record all say the universe really did pass through a high-temperature, high-density construction phase. But the moment we ask one step earlier, theory seems to hand the story over to a mathematical point that is physically opaque and conceptually empty. So the real question becomes this: did physics actually discover a singular beginning? Or did it simply drive its equations beyond the domain where they still deserve to be trusted? That is where mainstream physics gets stuck. General relativity is extraordinarily powerful when it describes stars, galaxies, black hole exteriors, and the middle to late universe. Yet once it is extrapolated into the most extreme regime, its own rulers, clocks, and geometric language begin to fail. Quantum gravity, meanwhile, still has no universally accepted finished framework ready to take over. In other words, the hardest step appears exactly where the old map is already tearing and the replacement map is not yet on the table. The deeper confusion is that three different claims are often packed into one sentence. First, the universe had a hot early phase. Second, the equations developed divergences when pushed backward. Third, therefore there must have been a real, physically unquestionable absolute beginning. Eft says the logical smuggling happens in that jump from the second claim to the third. If a thermometer explodes off scale, the first sober conclusion is that the thermometer has reached its limit, not that reality itself must literally be infinite. A mathematical blow-up can be a warning light for the breakdown of a language, not a birth certificate for a metaphysical point. Eft therefore keeps the hot early universe but demotes the singularity. In this view, singularity is best read as an alarm telling us that old classical geometry has reached the edge of its usable territory. It is not a command to worship a mysterious T=0 point. The same interpretive move already matters in black hole physics, where mainstream language often speaks as though the interior terminates in a singular dot. Eft rewrites the extreme region as a layered machine, an outer skin that relieves pressure, inner working layers, a shredding zone, and a boiling core. The singularity is not promoted to sacred substance. It is treated as the sign that the old description has lost contact with the real process. Once that logic is carried back to cosmic origins, the question changes completely. What needs explaining is no longer why did an infinitesimal point explode, but how did an extreme upstream condition fail, exit, and hand over an early energy sea to the later universe? Eft's candidate picture is therefore not a singular point detonating from nowhere. It is closer to a cosmic pressure cooker that spent an immense time releasing pressure through tiny pores, then crossed an outer critical failure, spilled its high-tension interior outward into a sea, and finally formed a boundary through chain breaking. The sequence can be compressed into 4 stages: pore evaporation, outer critical failure, overflow into a sea, and broken chain boundary formation. Read that way, the hot early universe is preserved rather than denied. It was hot because it inherited the leftover heat of an extreme state exiting. It was nearly uniform because the parent interior had long lived in a regime of violent mixing and strong homogenization. It was not perfectly smooth because even a well-stirred boil is never a dead mirror. Overflow and relaxation naturally leave small wrinkles behind, and those wrinkles become the seeds of later structure. The CMB and the light element record then stop functioning as stamps certifying a unique physical singularity. They become what they look more like in practice: photographs and lab reports from an early high-temperature, high-density, strongly mixed worksite. That also gives us the key guardrail. Eft is not denying the hot early universe, and it is not claiming the observations are false. What it rejects is the automatic conversion of "we see evidence for a hot early phase" into "therefore a literal singular beginning must have existed." Evidence for a hot early phase is not the same thing as proof of a real singularity. Just as a divergence in the equations is not the same thing as a physical demand that the universe began as an absolute infinitesimal point. In EFT, what loses its throne is not the data, but the habit of bundling hot early history, mathematical blow-up, and unique absolute origin into one myth. So the singularity problem is rewritten at its root. We are not being asked to decorate an infinite point with better stories. We are being asked to reconstruct how an extreme regime exited the stage and left behind the early energy sea from which the later universe emerged. Tap the playlist for more. Next episode: Quantum Cosmology and the Universe's Initial Wave Function. Follow and share our new Physics Explainer series will help you see the whole universe more clearly.